Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you live in Pennsylvania or are thinking about car insurance here, this video is for you. Because today, we're breaking down the cheapest car insurance companies in 2026, or close to that, specifically for Pennsylvania drivers. We'll highlight 5 companies that frequently rank among the lowest cost insurers in the state, talk about how much you might realistically pay, and walk through who each company works best for. Whether you're a young driver, a commuter, or someone with a spotless record, I'll also cover why cheaper doesn't always mean worse and what to watch out for. Let's dive in. Section 1. The big picture. What does cheap car insurance in PA mean? First, it helps to know what average car insurance costs look like in Pennsylvania. According to recent data, many minimum or budget coverage policies in the state cost as little as $332 per year under certain providers for basic coverage. Full coverage policies cost more, but even those with some providers can be relatively affordable compared to national norms. Rates vary widely depending on your zip code, driving history, coverage level, car type, etc. That's why cheap is relative, but some insurers consistently show up near the bottom for many driver profiles. With that context, let's meet the companies that often deliver for budget-conscious drivers in Pennsylvania, but with a grain of salt, always quote check. Section 2. Rank number 1. State Farm Insurance. Balanced, affordable, and reliable, often best for many drivers. At the top of our list is State Farm Insurance. Many analyses show that for a broad range of drivers, including those with clean records or even minor infractions, State Farm often offers among the lowest or most stable premiums in Pennsylvania. Typical costs or ranges. For minimum or basic policies, State Farm appears among the cheapest. Some sources list the annual cost around US $370 per year for minimum coverage. For more comprehensive coverage, full coverage, while not always the absolute cheapest, State Farm still delivers a reasonable balance between price and coverage, depending on your driving profile. Why State Farm is number 1 and who it's best for. Reliable and stable pricing, especially if you want predictable premiums without wild fluctuations. Good for drivers with a clean record, or even those with minor tickets or past issues, State Farm tends to give competitive quotes in those cases. Good balance between affordability and comprehensive coverage. Not the rock-bottom cheapest, but often the least regret choice if you want value plus stability. If you're in Pennsylvania, get a quote from State Farm first, especially if you care about stability and decent coverage rather than bare minimum. It's often the safest, middle-of-the-road but cheap enough option. Section 3. Rank number 2. Geico Insurance. Affordable option for many, especially with clean records. Next up is Geico Insurance, a national insurer that tends to have competitive premiums for many Pennsylvanians, especially liability-only or modest coverage customers. What data says? In certain analyses, Geico is listed among low-cost or below-average cost insurers in Pennsylvania. That said, for full coverage or more comprehensive policies, Geico's premiums in some comparisons are higher than the absolute cheapest. Why Geico may still be a smart pick? If you want a national brand with broad coverage options, easy online quoting, and wide availability, Geico offers convenience and simplicity. For drivers who qualify, clean record, modest car, possibly older car, minimal coverage needs, Geico can be cost-effective. It's also good to compare Geico versus other providers. Your profile may get a better deal than averages suggest, especially since many rate factors, age, driving history, location, weigh heavily. Best for drivers looking for a balance of low cost with convenience and flexibility. People who want to shop quickly online and don't need all the perks of premium coverage. Those comparing multiple insurers, Geico is often a strong contender alongside others. Section 4. Rank number 3. Erie Insurance. Good value, especially for minimum or moderate coverage. Third on the list is Erie Insurance, a regional insurer that often shows up in Pennsylvania as a solid value pick, especially for liability-only or mid-level coverage. What recent stats show? For minimum coverage or basic liability, Erie has among the lowest rates in some datasets for PA drivers. For full coverage policies or more comprehensive plans, Erie tends to be competitive, sometimes undercutting many larger national companies. Why Erie stands out? Often gives affordable premiums for basic or standard coverage, ideal for drivers on a budget or those with older cars. might offer better value than larger insurers for certain types of drivers, like lower mileage, fewer claims, stable history. Might be a good middle-of-the-road cheap, not ultra-cheap with minimal coverage, but decent value with moderate protection. Who should consider Erie? Drivers prioritizing low to mid coverage and affordability over bells and whistles. Owners of older cars, lower value vehicles, or those who don't drive much. Those comfortable with slightly less coverage compared to top-tier plans in exchange for lower premiums. Section 4. Rank number 4. Nationwide insurance. Often competitive, especially for clean record or specific profiles. Next, nationwide insurance. It may not always be the absolute cheapest, but for many Pennsylvanians, especially with good driving history and certain coverage choices, Nationwide can be a reasonable and sometimes underrated option. Data and context. Nationwide shows up among insurers with competitive premiums for some drivers in Pennsylvania when averaged across certain policies. For minimum coverage or state minimum policies, depending on profile, Nationwide may offer reasonable rates. Why choose Nationwide? Could be a sleeper pick if your driving history, vehicle type, and coverage needs align well. Good to include in your quote comparison, sometimes big names underprice or overprice depending on your profile. Offers the opportunity to get acceptable coverage at moderate cost, particularly if you shop smart, liability only or basic coverage, and don't need extras. Best for drivers seeking a balance between cost and decent coverage, but not necessarily the lowest possible price. People open to comparing multiple quotes rather than defaulting to big names. Those whose driving history profile may not be perfect, but still want affordable rates. Section 6. Rank number 5. USAA insurance. Cheapest if you only qualify. Great for those eligible. Last and potentially the cheapest is USAA insurance, but this comes with a big caveat. USAA is only available to members of the military, veterans, and their families. What the numbers show when eligible. For full coverage nationwide, USAA often ranks as the lowest cost provider among comparable companies for those eligible. In Pennsylvania, for some coverage types, USAA's estimated premiums for qualified members have been reported as lower than many full coverage competitors. Why USAA is potentially number 5 or even better, but with limitations. If you meet eligibility, military, veteran, or family eligible, USAA often delivers strong, low-cost insurance with good coverage and benefits. It's a top pick for those qualifying, but automatically excluded for many, which is why it ranks lower for general population comparisons. For qualified drivers, it's often worth getting a quote first. Their rates may outperform many larger, more widely available insurers. Who should consider USAA? Military, veterans, or eligible family members, you could get one of the lowest cost, most reliable policies. Drivers wanting the best balance of low cost plus decent coverage, assuming eligibility. Important caveat. If you're not eligible, you can ignore USAA. It's simply not an option. And even if eligible, rates still vary depending on driving history, zip code, car, coverage type, etc. Section 7. Quick comparison table. 2025-ish data used as a starting point. Rank. Company. Typical or example rate in PA. Best for strengths. Limitations notes. 1. State Farm. $370 per year for minimum coverage. Balanced coverage and affordability, stable for many driver types. Not always cheapest for full coverage if you demand high limits or coverage. 2. Geico. Competitive for liability or minimal or modest coverage in PA. Varies with profile. Convenience, national coverage, flexibility. Full coverage tends to be more expensive than the cheapest. 3. Erie Insurance. Often low for liability or minimum or mid-level coverage in PA. Good value for budget-minded drivers or older cars. Coverage may be basic, more limited protection versus premium plans. 4. Nationwide Insurance. Can be competitive depending on driver history, car, and coverage choice. Balanced, moderate cost option, worth comparing quotes. Not always the cheapest, depends heavily on personal profile. 5. USAA Insurance. Among the lowest, if eligible, often lowest overall for full coverage nationwide. Great value for eligible members, military, veterans, or families. Eligibility limited, not an option for many drivers. Star note. These are sample or average rates based on recent public data. Your actual 2026 quote may be higher or lower depending on many factors. Section 8. Why insurance costs vary so much, and what that means for you, 2026 advice. It's important to understand, even within cheap companies, that your actual cost depends heavily on where you live, state, zip code, local risk, traffic, theft, weather. Pennsylvania is large and diverse, so rates fluctuate depending on region. What coverage level you choose, minimum, liability only, versus full coverage with collision, comprehensive, the difference in premium can be significant. Your driving history, age, credit, if used, vehicle type, age, value, safety features, usage, daily commute versus occasional driving, and more. Discounts or bundling, home and auto, good driving discounts, multiple cars, safe driving, which many insurers offer.